3, 2.
You're listening to Pros and Okay, I need to get out of my head.
Nipe nafasi nikueleze kiasi vile sisi hufanya pande hii ya the tracks. Hatuchezi na kazi, sipoteze wakati, tumekunja mashati.
You're listening to Pros and Possibilities, a collection of candid conversations with the dreamers and doers of our time and from different walks of life. These are the people who are shaping society and culture from wherever they are. We dive deep into their motivation, inspiration, creative process, and most importantly, what they envision for the future of society. I'm your host, Melissa Mbugua.
Evacuate the area.
I am a millennial, very proud of being a millennial, born in 1987. And then Nairobi born and raised, so I'm a Nairobian. I'm a curious person who I have the most fun at the border, at the edge, like where you're tinkering with what's possible, what's next, push boundaries, how can we break things, but also I'm not rebellious, I'm a cheeky breaker of things for the good. I also just love dreaming about how things could be better, fairer, more interesting, more abundant. And I also love people and sharing and exchanging ideas. And at the same time, I'm one of those people who loves to just get things done or start, Dreamer, I'm a dreamer and I'm a doer. And I entrepreneur, no surprises, just from that description I've just given. I ended up in life being an entrepreneur, a tinkerer, and I work in the space where tech meets arts and culture. So I'm part of the team that heads up NBO Film Festival, as well as I work as a consultant supporting leaders in this like tech, media, arts, innovation space in Africa and the developing world, the global south around the world. The other thing about me is that I love podcasts, and I've loved podcasts since I discovered what they were back in 2010. I love podcasts so much that I co-founded a podcasting festival specifically for Africans. Yes! Specifically for Africans and for people around the world to come and connect with podcasting in Africa. The festival is called Africa Podfest. So, 2020 is the year of years. It's the year when the world is turning a corner in history. And it's the year when, people in the year 3000 will look back at this the way we talk about the bubonic plague. So just when all this chaos kind of started, and then, I also got into the process of, like everybody else, just figuring out, okay, what are we going to do with this year now that the plans have been shed or have to be shed? An old idea that had been incubating for a while resurfaced, which is, I've always been curious, just as being the sort of person who's always looking to tinker and see, what's possible, what's next. So, I'm an innovator. So I was very curious to know what the other people in society, and specifically Kenyan society, were thinking, who are also change makers. I was very curious to know what they're thinking, what their process is, considering that they're the sort of people who have broken the rules, so to speak, and built new things in the past. So I was like, I think what I want to do is start a podcast about that introspective process, that journey that change makers go through that makes them do what they do. Like, why on earth? Why would you be so crazy as to decide, as if life is not challenging enough, to go and build new things and challenge the status quo? So I started Pros and Possibilities for that reason. And then the other thing about this is that I wanted to take a different direction from, what we're used to seeing, especially in, let me say, Kenyan media, is we're used to talking about people who've done big things as yes, they're successful and that's great, but we always talk about it as if they've arrived. Wamefika, and so we should all look up to them and we assume they know everything. So we have a view of leadership as arriving and as knowing it all. But the truth is, nobody really has life figured out. And if there's a time to admit that, it's this year. If you haven't admitted that no one has it figured out, and if you still don't know, if you're waiting for somebody else to give you all the answers to your own life and to society right now, then you need to get with the program and realize we need to figure it out together. And no one has the answers. Even science is at its edge, So even scientists are figuring things out, as we can see through this process of developing a vaccine. So we're really at the edge as a global society. So playing on the convention of pros and cons, I thought, because also in my own life, I've had this experience of whenever I've come to like a dead end or found myself in a fix, just by shifting my perspective a bit, looking at this bad situation, first accepting the bad situation as just, reality, accepting it for what it is without judging it, and then thinking about, okay, where do we go from here? Or how do we move from here? And suddenly the rays of light, the possibilities start to show up in, spaces that you least expect. So I decided to call it pros and possibilities instead of pros and cons for that reason. And it's not about me being a painfully brute force optimist. So this is not a podcast about being blindly optimistic. This is a podcast about accepting reality and the way things are, about choosing to embrace uncertainty, and being excited about finding surprising solutions or surprising pathways forward, and experimenting. So in the short term, like literally episode by episode, what this is it's a platform for the thoughts, that process, that reflecting process, that change and growth process that we're going through as individuals or with our friends, in our families, and as communities. This podcast is about bringing those conversations into the public space. So I hope that by listening and engaging, people get to realize, one, we're not alone. You're not alone. And number two, figuring out the way forward requires really for us to learn from each other. So you have solutions, you have answers. And so does everybody else if we just look. And of course, talk and share and listen to each other. That's how we'll collectively figure out the way forward. So in the short term, I hope that it'll be a space for people to realize they're not alone. And don't be ashamed about what looks like failure now, because honestly, we're turning a corner. So there are a lot of things we're going to have to leave behind. And actually on that note, so in the medium term, I hope that this will become a collection of conversations that will paint a picture about what contemporary Kenya was thinking and feeling in this period, 2020, 2021, in this period of COVID-19 and the chaos that it brought about. What were we thinking and what were we feeling? And can we see patterns in how we resonate with each other and in how we view the world and in how we view the future? Because why? Yeah, why? Why, Melissa? Why? Why should we care? It's because where we are now is a result of systems, structures, businesses, decisions that people who came before us, the previous generations, built and decided. So, for example, we are here in the situation we are as Kenya because someone decided to colonize us, right? And thereafter, a series of decisions happened. And this is not about judging whether those decisions are good and bad. It's just about acknowledging and realizing what they were and how we got here. And so if we're here where we are because of previous generations, and there are things that are not working, and there are some that are working, so what will our great-grandkids, the options they have depend on the decisions we make now. in this moment of all moments. So that's why it's so important for us to reflect internally and decide what we're going to change, and also collectively, because maisha ni kujituma, as Dan Aceda says. So stop waiting to be anointed by someone else. Anoint yourself, give yourself permission, embrace the power you have within you, and just, join us, join this journey. The other thing is that this podcast is not about famous people and celebs. It's about, so I'm going to be interviewing and having conversations with people who you may know and have heard of and have seen in public, on screens, etc. And also lots of people who you've probably never heard of. So this is just a space for us to acknowledge the different people who choose to send themselves on world-changing missions.
Well, what's been the most exciting conversation
so far? I don't know, that's hard to say because all the people are really interesting and people I genuinely find interesting, which is actually part of my reason for starting this, is I just wanted to have an excuse to talk to people I find cool. So, but what I would say, like, most interesting is the stuff that's jumped out that has come from those conversations. For example, with Schaefer said that she views leadership as compassion. Like, so if you're not compassionate, you can't be a president or, a business leader. And that struck me because it's such a different way from the conventional. And of course, it makes sense. It's like, when you think about it, it's like, of course, we're humans. So compassion is the basis, and empathy is the basis. And then the other thing that has struck me most so far is when Sheba was talking about how in her journey, like, to working with Eric, to managing Eric, she just did it because she'd struggled to find work, find a real job, quote unquote. And then she was just like helping out with Eric's stuff. And then it turned out to be such significant work. So sometimes you'd think the stuff you're doing is slight. Kumbe, it's world-changing stuff. So that's, so far, that's what's been really striking to me.
Let's talk about Schaefer Gore. What's the most interesting things about her, and how was the process just getting her to come onto the show?
So I've met Schaefer a while, but maybe a year and a half ago. So I know her, we are acquaintances. And when I first had this idea and put it down on paper, and was deciding, okay, who should I have as my first guest? I thought of Schaefer, and I just emailed her, and she responded. And I didn't expect. I was open and hoping she'd say yes, but she was so open. She didn't ask me many questions like, who's your audience? Do you already have 1,000,006 followers? She literally trusted me and trusted my vision. And that for me is so, I was like, wow, this is someone who, what you see her saying on Twitter and what she says in person and what she says on the podcast and how she responds to my new idea and vision. And she said yes. Schaefer is like legit in and out. What she says is who she is and what she does. She walks the talk, walks the walk, whatever that saying is. She's the real deal. I learned.
Sheba, you've known her much longer, you've worked together a long time.
Sheba, I've known her since, as well, about 2 years maybe, and I work with her now because I joined the team at the NBO Film Festival. So I'm one of we're 4. So I joined Sheba, Mbifi, and Louisa. So I've known her in that context, and so we've spent a lot more time together. So by the time I was asking her about this, in fact, I'd spoken to her for so long about this idea to do a podcast, even with when I was thinking and developing the idea for Africa Podfest. She's one of the friends who I spoke to. So for her as well, by the time I was asking her to come on, it wasn't a surprise to her. But I still, pitched her what it is and sent, a formal email. Because just because someone is your friend doesn't mean you should assume that when you cross the line into more business stuff, you should treat it with the respect that it deserves. And of course, being friends, the conversation could have gone so many different ways, I think. I didn't know what to expect. And what you hear in the episode is also new to me. So I did not know these things that she said. And so that was pleasant, a pleasant surprise. So I was enjoying that conversation as it was happening. And I feel like I had a similar experience to the audience in that episode, even though I know Sheba, which just goes to show you think you know, but there's always so much more to discover about yourself, about the people around you, and about the world. I'm so proud of this and so excited. An idea first, that then you tell someone your idea and then they say yes, or they encourage you, or they give you feedback, and then you go and you start. Oh, and I need to tell you about Baraza and how without Baraza, I would not be in episode 2 or dreaming even more, because I applied for the Micro Okoa grant. And, just like, okay, submit as one does with ideas. And then the fact that they said yes and sent me money and support, including, Sema Box, is what gave me, just wind to continue. So Baraza has been, one of the crazies in terms of an organization, and the team there. The team here at Baraza has been super amazing in just giving life to ideas, mine and many others, that might not have seen the light of day before. So Team Baraza all the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to spread the love, and let's keep talking. Check out the episode notes to find our contact deets and more juice from this discussion. Thank you for listening.